What is up, Partner Up? We're back. Holy cow, it has been a wild start to 2023. So we're in February now. It's just me on the podcast today. I finally let Isaac take a day off. It's the first time he's actually had like a formal vacation since we started working together. But I'm joined by a good friend here. He's joined us on a couple of the past events at PLX and at the Partner Kickoff event. Justin Gray. Justin Gray, what's up? Welcome to Partner Up.
Hey, man. Good to see you again.
Yeah. So Justin's taught me a lot about partnering with agencies and service providers, like tactically, like on the ground. Like there's a lot of lessons that we're going to unpack today, probably around that. But Justin and I were catching up before the show. Justin, you were telling me you're not just doing that anymore. You're kind of quasi announcing on the show, talking about all of that hard work that goes into partnering with tech companies and being a service provider. You still think there's so much opportunity in here that you've launched a fund.
Yeah, certainly. And there's a bit to unpack, certainly even in that approach and what we're doing. So as you mentioned, in December, I stepped out of my operator role in Shift Paradigm, which was the ultimate roll-up from LeadMD, decade plus marketing operations and go-to-market strategy.
Thousands of tech implementations, right? Thousands and thousands.
Over 4,000.
Wow.
Primarily got our start within marketing automation, Marketo specifically, but then kind of grew to encompass all that sales and marketing tech has become across the last decade plus, right? But so kind of did the integration within those organizations, and my eyes have been very much focused on what I think is a huge disparity around the necessary ingredients for growth within an organization. So I know we'll love talking about that from a partnership aspect, but I also think that it applies to how we fund and how we try to amplify those organizations today. So we are starting our own fund, and and doing so through an operator lens that I don't think has necessarily been attempted in the past, right? So you see a lot of the growth of all these kind of operator-backed funds and so on, but we're really going a step further into that by stepping in from the day-to-day, from the ground level, from the tactic element within the organizations that we invest in, bringing that go-to-market expertise, and certainly, which is the next rung, partner-led growth, which I think is been the absolute success button that I've always pulled within my own businesses, but then also what we helped a lot of organizations adopt from a go-to-market standpoint as well.
So you're doing this. It's you, and you got a couple people involved as well. You got Josh Wagner, who we also had on PartnerUp before. So I'm surprised. It's funny I had Josh on before you, but because Josh was so great to co-sell with. Like he was so great to co-sell with because it was like he knew whenever he was getting a bad rep from the tech provider.
Sure.
And it was like he would teach them the nicest lessons. Like he could come in and just destroy them, and he would teach them the nicest lessons. So you started it. You brought Josh, so you got the band back together.
Yep.
So you have some incredible operators yourself from an executive go-to-market standpoint, but then even frontline, like Josh is a heck of a leader and coach on that part, right?
Yeah, and so Josh and I are the primary managing partners in the business. But the interesting thing is we've kind of got this, ever expand. In fact, I just got off a call with one prior to hopping on here. This ever expanding circle of what will initially be contracted operating partners, but then we'll start to kind of bring those folks into the business as well. So tech implementation to process and revenue operations to go to market strategy and really anything that surrounds go to market. So we've got just a plethora of relationships and folks that are excited to get started and really kind of parachute into these organizations and stimulate their go to market.
Well, I think in terms of a thesis, this is really incredible. If we're in the era of ecosystems, I believe, Justin, I've had my finger on the pulse of the market for a long time. This is the first fund to be created with that as a primary thesis, which I'm super. You beat Isaac and I to it. Isaac and I were toying around with this idea. We're like, maybe we should go do this.
Well, and it really does come down to what is that. We're also working on and soon releasing a book on this topic, but what is that cheat code? And cheat code I think gets a bad rap in terms of the word cheat, but what is that lever that you can pull that's truly going to be a 1 + 1 = 10 type situation? And I see partner ecosystems, when they're run properly, as absolutely that cheat code.
100%. Tell us real quick, and then we'll get into some more stories. So Justin Gray on LinkedIn, and then you're gonna be launching the site. What's the name of the fund, and where can we find you? Just because I know there are some budding partner tech entrepreneurs out there and ecosystem tech entrepreneurs that eventually probably want to connect with you, read your content, and have a VC fund that's on our side. Let's go, people! This is exciting.
Yeah. So the firm is called In Revenue Capital. You can reach us on inrevenue.capital. Site will be launching here in the next week or so. And as I mentioned, we're also putting the book out. You can sign up on that site to get early access to the first chapter of what we're putting together there. So definitely check us out, reach out. We're doing a ton of just connection and conversation out there in the space, predominantly focused on exactly what we're talking about here today, partner-led growth.
Amazing. So I know it's been hard out in the market right now. I wanted to bring Justin on. This isn't a paid thing, by the way. So if it's felt like a paid one, it's just because I'm really legitimately that excited to have a VC that's...
You haven't hit me up for money yet, so...
Right. The VC that's on this side of the table and has the operator partner experience that Justin has, and Josh and the team at In Revenue Capital. And it's funny that you named it In Revenue Capital because that's how you always signed off all your emails, Justin.
That is correct. If you've received an email for me in the last, 5-6 years, that's been the sign off. I mean, ultimately, that's right in line with our thesis, right? Like, how do we, we're looking for organizations that, have revenue. They have great product market fit. They've got a cohort of raving fans, but they need to scale that. They need to, really put the afterburners on and amplify that revenue motion. And again, I think, what we'll talk about here today is the secret sauce in doing exactly that.
Well, I think you really taught me a lot about what it means to drive revenue with your ecosystem partners if you are quote unquote the tech parent, meaning, you have more in revenue or you have more in headcount than, let's say, your ecosystem of service or solution partners. And I've been working on something that still ain't public yet, but I'm really excited about. But the underlying current between this is like, look, our job right now in the partnerships landscape is to drive revenue together. Like all orgs, all eyes are on revenue. Anything that isn't driving revenue is getting cut across the board. And driving revenue together, what's so interesting about this concept of like, if you're in the partnership space, you're in the partner tech space, so many people haven't done the job that their customers are trying to do. What do I mean by that? If you're in the partner tech space, you're in a partnerships function, how many people are you working with inside of your company? Let's say you sell to CIOs. Let's say you sell to sales leaders. You sell to marketers. You haven't really, so much of many of the people on your team have not done the job that your customer is trying to do. And in order to drive revenue together, you have to have the people who has done the job that your customers are trying to do. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what makes it very simple, something very complex. Very simple is, how are we driving revenue with people who have done the thing that we're promising our customers, that they can do?
Sure.
Are these service providers? Are these technology partners that provide a capability that does change something? I mean, is it strategy? Is it consulting? And I think in a lot of ways, just let's go down to like maybe some foundational levels and some of our backstory. I remember you came out to invited you. I don't know if you were already in Boston. You must have already been in Boston for some conference, and you came by the Drift headquarters. And I remember you met with David Cancel, CEO of Drift, and me. And I remember I was dressed probably something like this. You were dressed to the nines, suited up, DC looking, like he was a Boston Street bum as well. And he goes, DC looks at me and goes, "Oh, that guy looks serious. This is a real business meeting."
we fooled you.
He goes, "This is a real business meeting." And I remember, saying like, "Hey, we're going to make something great here. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard." But some of the lessons that I learned over the course of that kind of multi-year partnership was tying this point back together. I don't think that Drift really knew fundamentally how to change the website into this concierge experience, driving people to the next phase. Like, I'll give you the perfect example. I was trying to figure that out with you, right? With your team. Like, I was trying to get into the implementations. I was trying to help you build a service model. And you kept on saying like, guys, you have to standardize A, B, and C and be able to make these things happen. Because otherwise, how am I going to productize it? How am I going to make money off of it? And so many companies just think they can pass a deal to the partners and go, hey, look, work on this. Okay, you'll figure out what all of our customer success means. Let's unpack that. I don't know, that paradox, that partner paradox, where a company really doesn't have their delivery model, their service model figured out, where it's like, hey, here's the exact customer outcomes and the packaging around that. And they're trying to partner with you as a service provider.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, that concept that you mentioned, which we used to frame as speaking CMO, right? Like, how do you really understand what one of your customer organizations is trying to do generally, and then how your solution, software, whatever it happens to be, fits into that mix and can amplify, their returns, their growth, so on and so forth. And I think the underlying aspect that is really fundamental to doing this successfully, and that a lot of tech partners miss the boat on, is truly sitting down and mapping out a maturity curve for their customers on that platform, but probably more importantly, within the discipline that they're supporting. So if we're talking about, conversational, a conversational approach to a website, right? There is that low hanging fruit where you plug in, a chat client. We'll generalize it, and then you've got, those couple little steps to getting live and having your first playbook available there. And frankly, that, you could argue that that's a maturity curve, right? Yeah, we're enabled on the tool, someone's using it, they're seeing some value for it. But so many of those maturity curves and that outlook is framed by the software provider's purview. How do we get them live on the tool, feeling good about what they're paying us on a monthly basis? And we don't really challenge them to go further with that. We don't really look at what is that, KPI that you're trying to drive. How do we ensure that the entire team knows what that KPI is, which I think is one of the most fundamental things that needs to shift in software, is, measuring ourselves by the KPIs of our clients. So,
right. So lots of vendor language, vendor milestones, vendor think, but not customer milestones, customer outcomes, customer think.
Right. And you're seeing the results of that in a big way right now with, what we're terming as a market shift or a potential recession, right? Everyone's looking at their P&L and they're cutting costs. They're not cutting, investments. They're not cutting items that they're generating unbelievable returns for them. And that's all because those providers didn't fundamentally understand why did they sign? Why did they sign on the dotted line? What were they trying to generate? And then how do we challenge them to keep going further, within that maturity curve? And so how do we ensure that we're measuring ourselves on that client KPI and dashboard? But at the same time, how do we also challenge the client? How do we get them to think further? And I think that's where, you mentioned Drift potentially has so much potential to go deeper with their clients, because everyone I talk to has a couple playbooks up and running. They're seeing good results with that, but they're not pushing that envelope. And I think that's what we were trying to get you guys to focus on, at LeadMD and then Shift and Drift. It's great. We've got these fundamental milestones that we need to achieve, but what's next? And how do we build that into a service that can be delivered with consistency and with quality, both internally as well as externally, as you start to ebb and flow and kind of scale those services teams? Like, as a services provider, we know that everyone is going to do a portion of their enablement, their launch services, their customer success. But those are also very difficult teams to scale, and they're, seasonal, or they have, a lot of flow at the end of a quarter, and that's difficult to staff and really ensure that we've got the degree of quality that we need to support our customers. So we can be that overflow for you. And one of the first things that we want to do is, again, understand that maturity curve. Where do you want to get customers to? And how are we going to ensure that what we're doing is consistent with what you're doing? And then, hey, take the Pepsi challenge with me. If I can generate higher NPS, if I can generate higher results, give me more work at that point. But I want to be able to develop that even playing field, so that we know everything is being measured by the same yardstick.
Yeah. So where in the beginning I wanted to jump right into accounts, because obviously there's pressure on that, just like every partner person. what we ended up doing is exactly what you said. We co-authored and co-published the conversational marketing maturity model, or the revenue acceleration maturity model, whatever we branded it as. And we had these distinct 5 phases, and we built out the I hate to say the intellectual framework, but at least the conceptual framework for what this maturity curve looks like. And that gave us, I think, a much better starting point, because then our marketing team started to use that language. Our customer success team started to use that language. It obviously built brand attached for LeadMD in terms of our ecosystem. And that was co-marketing, right? So
Sure.
like we went out, we talked about it. It provided long tail value that always had LeadMD's branding on it. And in a lot of ways, that's where some partnership stuff should talk. Like, hey, let's fight this intellectual battle out in public. Isaac, counterpart not here today, he likes to call it learning out loud. That's kind of what we did. Yeah,
Totally.
there was backdoor private meetings, but we went and said, hey, here's what we think this looks like.
And the service provider is always looking at, I call it the bookend. What are the services that I provide that are going to ready someone for your services? And then once I've got them live on that piece of technology, what am I going to try to do for them in that kind of post environment, right? And that that intellectual piece, that understanding is also helpful internally. Whether it's a service provider, software, all sides of the equation. How are we thinking about those attachment services? What are we going to do next for this client that, again, is going to provide value in us, build trust in us, both individually and jointly as a partnership, so that we can see that roadmap? Some services firms are building, internal buy-in on a partnership as well. So I think one of the most fundamental things, through partnership is putting yourself in the seat of the client and also putting yourself in the seat of the partner. How am I going to provide value to them? And then obviously that value is going to come back in spades.
Right, 100%. The next thing I want to hop into was, I think we did a handful of deals back and forth, opportunistically kind of managed trying to figure it out here and there for a while. In fact, I won't go down that rabbit hole. What I wanted to get to was the second that we started talking about packaged services. That was such an interesting lesson on how you built that with Marketo, and then how we were trying to build at Drift a professional services organization. This has been like one of my biggest insights. It was like, okay, we're building this professional services organization, and there's not a single person in this PS org who's ever been a CMO. So how,
right.
And then I go and I talk to so many PS and CS leaders, and I'm like, no one on your entire team has ever done the job that you think your software does for that client.
Sure.
And it's so hard. So there was some shakeup and some headcount and whatever. And I finally had a CCO that was like open to it. Like, sure, let's bring in a partner. We need capacity. Right. But you didn't just hop in and go, sure, we'll take those deals, like throw them over to us. You actually were like, hey, no, stop back. There was a whole bunch that went into that conversation for me. And maybe let's go to the point to where it was like, okay, Justin, you said you wanted to do these package services kind of from the beginning. Now we're open to it. Let's do it. And you're like, wait, no, there's a way to do this the right way. Let's start the convo there.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it all comes back to the relationship that we build with our client. It has to be rooted in result. It has to be rooted in quality, right? And so how do we, and that parlays over into the partner as well. How do I ensure that what I'm going to do is in line with what you want to have done and is up to that standard? And frankly, I want to exceed that standard. So, we started something called package services, I think around 2015. And it was really in response to what was happening within Marketo at the time. Because obviously, like a lot of early stage software organizations, it's figure it out in the early days. What's the client need? Let's throw some smart people on it and
throw some CSMs at it, and
yep.
it's helping. It's quote unquote helping the customer, but it's different across 10 CSMs.
Yeah, absolutely. So that motion is different. The outputs are different. The results to the client are different. And so when we were initially talking with them about doing outsourced services, which eventually we did about 35%. When Marketo was still under their own flag, about 35% of their implementation. So if you bought Marketo in 2015 through 2019, a pretty good propensity that those would ultimately come to us, and trying to figure out how we could deal with that type of volume and really define the partnership around the customer and their needs. we developed this package services concept, which was not too different than what we did in the early days of starting, a marketing ops or a marketing automation consultancy, because no one knew what an implementation of Marketo looked like in '09, 2010. It was just, you got the opinionation of whoever was in that seat. You had a little bit of enablement, and then largely you were kind of left on your own at that point. And so, we need to define, all right, lead scoring, lead nurturing, life cycle and process. Here's your different campaign frameworks. We had to define what went into those implementations. And so, back in those days, we did kind of the small, medium, large, very much the software approach, right? Which one meets with your needs, and all right, here's how I'm going to train my consultants internally on how to perform those items. So not only defining what the outputs were, but really defining what those tasks, frankly, what are those milestones and tasks that go into delivering that. And that's how we created quality in what was a very immature hiring pool at that point, because not that many people had run marketing automation back in the day. Even
Right.
today, you're largely hiring folks that have a resume that looks like logos, right? Oh, you did that over at ServiceNow and Snowflake. Great. You must be great. Let's hire you. There's not a lot of curriculum. And in fact, you can't go to school for that still. So by really productizing and packaging those services, we're able to create that understanding, that learning internally, the consistency with our client, really smooth out the sales process because they knew exactly what they were getting, and even some of the frameworks by which we were delivering those services. But then it translated really well to what we're talking about. How do we look at that beyond, obviously, that marketing automation lens and into different solutions like a Drift or a Seismic or any of the other groups that we did this motion for? How do we, again, define what success looks like, and then how do we create a roadmap to get there?
What's so interesting about this is it really shifted my perspective that successful solution or service or agency partnerships, whatever name you want to call them, I think you hit the nail on the head with package services. Like, if you have a customer success organization and your software requires, let's say, change management and an ops and process that might be orchestrated across data, so across a map or a CRM or some platform,
Mm-hmm.
there is a need for some professional services. Like, most software companies have that need. And if your software can accomplish something great, then most companies should and are willing to pay for it if you're running a halfway decent process.
Sure.
And what I learned is about when a company hits that phase, or you're launching a new product, if you're a big company and it's a new SKU and it's a new thing, new sales motion, new marketing, new everything, you run the same issue. So it doesn't matter if you're a couple hundred employees like it was at the time or a few thousand. Is that the CS team and PS team is going to be looking at it through one primary lens, which is the product lens.
Mm-hmm.
They're really looking at it through the product lens. And then they say they're listening to the customer. Well, I'm listening to what my customer is telling me that they need. And your customer didn't buy your software to be told what to do by CSMs that haven't done their job. So by bringing in that partner from Jump Street, like Justin, like Shift Paradigm, Lead MD, or whoever it is, and going, hey, we want to productize or package some services so that way we have the capacity, when this works, to sell it and just send it directly to you and keep, maybe just enough margin to pay the AE. Like, that seems to me to be like the right answer. Would you agree with that real quick, Justin? Like, software company keeps just enough margin to pay the AE. That's it.
Oh, from the services angle?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you have to incentivize people.
Right. So keep just enough to pay the AE. What's the benefit? Well, you're not carrying the CapEx, right, from your CFO perspective of having that headcount on staff. So it's like, yeah, look, it's not a net profit center. It shouldn't be. It's a net success center.
But more so to your point, right? Like, if you're staffing a reasonably decent services firm, right? These folks should be living and breathing that customer headspace, right? The CMO, the VP of demand, whoever it happens to be, like, and you can't afford to do that within a software organization. You can't afford to incubate a completely different business. Like, our goal is to be constantly learning and understanding what the marketer is facing. That's our obsession, right? And so you're bringing that obsession to the brand and the success of a software platform. So I think there's so much value in working with, not only a services provider, but one that can really provide that customer lens.
Absolutely. And they should be done together. And what I ended up creating, and I released on partnerkickoff.com. So like, feel free to check everyone out. If y'all haven't seen my partner ecosystem roadmap, like Justin has his fingerprints all over this, as I realized, I'm like, okay, we need this partnerships person that's really about activation and onboarding, whatever that's called. But then we need this like delivery person that's sitting on the ProServe team. It's part of their objective to bring partners in and get their input on our packaging for ProServe, work with them collaboratively, and then do like, I don't know if this is industry speak or not, Justin. What we were calling ride-alongs, is that stuff that other people use? I
Yeah,
don't know.
some derivative of that, sure.
Right. So like, what did we end up doing? It was like, okay, we kind of conceptually, we had this maturity model. We committed to like doing 10 deals that we do with you, right? So like there was some financial commitment from both parties, right? You had to staff it, we had to commit the budget, etc. And then it was like, okay, let's do some ride-alongs. Well, what did that mean? It was like, well, we're going to have our PS and CS team, and then we're going to have our partners team going through an implementation at the same time. And maybe the first one, our CSM PS team was leading because they knew the software better. Maybe the client, what they need better. And eventually that inverts where the partner is kind of like taking the lead on all of it. And I was like, I feel like our new CCO, Bart, and our head of success and all of them, they learn more about our customers and the job to be done from our customers throughout that process than they could have anywhere else by going through that together, driving those outcomes together with you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple real hot buttons there, and I'll try not to go too far down a rabbit hole. But on that explicitly, right? What's the typical playbook for creating a partner program? Like at some point in there, certification always rears its head, right? Like how do we create that agreed upon level of proficiency?
Right.
And that certification is always something devoid of actual client work. That shadowing aspect, that ride along aspect. It's always like watch these videos and fill out this multiple choice exam. And sometimes there's a shadowing element, but I mean, you're going to find out far more about your platform in the throes of an actual real world situation and how do you.
Implementation. Like these are real customer accounts we decided to go into right away. Right.
Yep, totally. And you're going to not only the client's needs, but how your software reacts to those needs, what you need to customize, and then use that as a training ground and a proving ground for onboarding new staff, new partners, so on and so forth. It's just such a critical aspect. You mentioned something a bit ago in terms of measuring clients through the software lens, right? And this is my biggest diatribe on SaaS today, which is that we use usage as a proxy for success, which is just absolutely insane. Like, not to take anything away from a lot of the great CS analytics platforms out there. They're one signal, but they're not the results based signal. And so I think again you have to understand, looking through that CMO lens, or that whoever it happens to be on the executive side, the person stroking the check at the end of the day, what fundamentally did they want to achieve? And there's also an art to doing that, because as you have conversations from within the organization, you're going to get folks that are saying, yeah, I want to be more efficient. I want to cut out this manual process. Right now, efficiency and manual process, a lot of those solutions are getting axed, right? You're really looking for who's driving revenue for us, who's facilitating growth, who's diminishing
Painkiller
churn.
versus vitamin.
Yep.
Vitamins are out. That was like crypto. Crypto was a vitamin. It's gone right now.
So replace that usage metric, or at least replace it in pole position with the actual KPI of the client. So number one, and we saw this during COVID a lot, when everyone was sending that email, how is this pandemic affecting your business? If you were measuring, customer KPIs and had that as your North Star from the very beginning, you knew how that pandemic was going to impact that client. You
Right.
knew what that shift was going to be for them. And you could reach out with, yeah, hey, thoughts and prayers, I hate to say it, but he also, in addition to that, here's what we've come up with that can impact your business today, right? What that value forward recommendation or feature or whatever it happens to be is already going to be, and you can provide some value right from the get-go.
Why do you think what's so interesting about this learned experience or shared struggle, so to speak, and you kind of learning through this process with you is, why do you think so many CS and PS leaders from the SaaS native world, right? So they're coming from venture backed, growing, are so reticent or not, they don't have that approach. I mean, I was in the partner team and even like doing package services, like, oh, we can sell the services and just send them directly to you. That makes a lot of sense to me. Like,
Sure.
we don't need to bring you into a sales process every time.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just an exposure thing? Like CS and PS people aren't exposed to that as even an option? Like, every time I've talked to a CS leader about this, that's SaaS native, right? So there are some channel folks that like kind of get this,
Mm-hmm.
but new generation, new subset of leaders, new era of companies. A lot of that leadership's gone from day-to-day operating roles. Why is it that it's such a hard thing for us to figure out? Do we just need to evangelize it, or what's your take on that?
Well, I think everyone goes to what they know, and I don't think that
Right.
folks have seen a lot of examples of success in this area because it largely has not been tried. To your point, I think there's also some perverse incentives within there. There's first and foremost the customer trust and knowing your customer and being close to that customer, and it's a kind of a really dirty pill to pass that on to someone outside the organization. I think that's where you don't have that relationship and that trust. That's when the partner team needs to do its job better, quite frankly. And but then you've also got, you know, folks have been told for a long time, like, you need to create value for that business. You need to create a revenue center for that business. And I think, most people have seen that directly in terms of staffing up headcount and charging for those services. That always seems to be kind of the second milestone. The first thing is just do it, get the customer successful, get them implemented, shorten that timeline, and then everyone goes to, all right, how do we monetize this? Which is fine. Like, you need to be charging for your services to support a partner model, because the partner sure wants to. But then I think there's another rung of maturity in there, which is, how do I drive even more value for my organization in terms of outsourcing this to a partner? Because most of the folks, like you mentioned, to cover the cost of an AE, there's other margin in there as well. Even if they don't want to pass all that outside the organization, there's a wholesale rate there that will support showing a profit line within that business. And so there's really no excuse to, if you are doing each one of those maturity steps well.
So I want to kind of recap this segment, and I want to go into another topic where we get back to like VC a little bit. Is, from my point of view, the lessons that I learned working with you and the other partners in, kind of our ecosystem, is that I fundamentally believe that service, solution, agency partnerships, whatever you want to call them, should really originate and start in the success and services side of the business, not in the sales side.
And
Like,
they never
we
did.
definitely did a lot better together after we had some of this stuff figured out on the front lines, and we knew we could drive client success together. And you realize, okay, I can upsell an account that Drift sends to me easily, and we can more easily identify accounts where Drift can make an impact. And there was no net cost to us doing that. Like, in fact, we could save headcount. So instead of us focusing 100% myopically on just driving revenue, we could save money up front, drive customer value, and then create long-term, revenue opportunities back to us. Like, partner success has to start with customer success every single time. I fundamentally believe that now. And more importantly, if you're going to have a great business, and if there's anything you want to hang your hat on partnerships, people, it's this. It's that you got to bring the people who've done the thing that your customers want to do to the table. And you have to die on that hill with your CS leader, unless your CS leader just happens to be the world's best X or Y at the thing their customers want to do, which I don't see that happen ever.
Yep.
Bring those partners in, help. Key takeaway here: if you're not offering partner services that your sales team can sell, you are severely damaging your potential for having any kind of ecosystem. So I think that's a really big takeaway. And Justin just laid out some groundwork on how he's done it, not just with Marketo Thousands, did it with Drift, did it with Seismic, did it with a lot of different tech companies, which I thought, I want to write about this with you, like, at some point, Justin, and really
Agreed.
detail this into a playbook, because it's really good stuff, man. And no one, not to my knowledge, no one's wrote about it.
And inadvertently there, you just did a great pivot, because I fundamentally agree, right? Like, you have to work with the areas in the organization that are closest to the customer. And frankly, that CS team is normally that epicenter. They know what the client needs. They know how to provide that value, and they know the right types of additional services. It might be additional tech as well. Like, hey, whatever you need to enable that customer's goals, bring it in within that layer. It also, however, plays in a major way on the go-to-market side, and you hit the nail right on the head in terms of acquiring revenue more efficiently. Like, that is the thesis of in revenue, right? The reason that we're focusing not only on parachuting operators into the go-to-market motion, but specifically the partner-led motion and building partner-led ecosystems is because we can do that more effectively. We can deploy capital within businesses and get more from that investment
Right.
by not flooding headcount into those AE areas of the business. We can onboard great fundamental AEs that can speak the language of the customer, but then we can also partner them and pair them with other folks that frankly have the keys to that relationship or can amplify that relationship. And so,
okay, this is where this is going to get really fun now. So I didn't know I was going to get to talk about this, but I'm excited that I do. I've had this feeling for a while in VC that it's like, look, you got to hit that unicorn, that one, 1 out of 10 companies might make a return, but 1 out of 100 returns the fund, right? I felt like there's a big opportunity to like have a fund that's like focus on operational efficiency, right? So like partnerships, like better unit economics, make the dollar go further because there's long-term implications to the things that are being done today. There's compound interest and value on that investment. That you could consistently bat triples or, a 5x or whatever. And it's like the rate of return might be, hey, we can do 5x on 5 deals out of 10 or 2x out of whatever, and not have to worry about placing these wild bets on companies that may be, 100x, right? Return. Yeah, I mean, is that part of the thesis on what you're doing? Like you're perfectly fine with a, 3x, 5x within a reasonable time frame, obviously over 10 years
sure.
But, is that part of your thesis, Justin?
Totally. I mean, we're looking at that the type of amplification you mentioned in a 2 to 4x, 2 to 4 year time frame, right? Specifically based on what we're talking about here, right? Like how do I hire smarter? How do I get more out of my resources? How do I amplify the go to market and even increase what would have been, flooding headcount in there through a partner ecosystem? And probably one of the most influential aspects that I ran into when I was looking at the VC space, and I'm not going to say VC is broken. Everyone knows it's the movie making business. They are doing exactly what they want to do. Where we want to be different in that is making those unit economics more friendly to the founder and to the organizations involved there. I'm not willing to kill 9 of my portcos to see that crazy blockbuster hit on the 10th. And when you look at where even why founders get in relationships with VCs, there's a great survey. It's linked on our website, will be linked on our website, where you look at what founders expect to get along with that capital. And then you look at what VCs, where they believe they're providing value along with that capital, right? And the two most disparate categories are hiring in relationships and go-to-market customer acquisition. That's where VCs believe that they're providing the most value, and where founders actually believe they're providing the least amount of value. It's the highest disparity.
I was about to say, I was like, that is definitely not where they're providing the most value.
Right, and so you look at that, and obviously companies are starving for this. They want it. It's the reason why they are giving up large portions of their company, right? And unfortunately, they're not getting that gift, that resource from the same folks that are providing capital. So we want to take those disparities and get rid of them. Also provide the capital allocation, but really focus on that better unit economics, better efficiency message, which I think is a perfect right fit for what we're seeing in the market right now.
Yeah, because I mean, there's also this no man's land of M&A, where there's just nothing there. Like there's never any deals that happen. There's rarely any deals that happen between about 200 million and $1 billion, right? It's like this weird, so you hit this escape velocity where there's no buyers and no one cares. And there's lots of deals to be done between 10 and 100 million, tons of deals to be done. And I feel like the appetite for founders is if you can secure the bag on a $20 million deal and you had your investors in at a $5 million investment, and you did that in 2-3 years, no investor is going to hate you.
Right.
Now you might, Sequoia might be like, oh, that was a loss, screw that founder. But it's like,
well, it didn't go to zero, which is
right.
what, God, I think the stat's 98% plus, going to zero at this point. So, I mean, that's great returns in my mind.
100%, 100%. Well, I love that that's part of the thesis. If whenever you're recruiting the long tail of LPs, I'm not your first, LP, obviously, but the long tail of LPs, I'll have to throw a check your way. Question about the companies that you're looking at now and the innovation that you're seeing. Is there anything, Justin, in terms of the tech ecosystem around partnerships technology or ecosystem technology, and or how businesses are going to market with partnerships? Is there a preference for your fund? This is just me out of genuine curiosity for, hey, we're looking at technology that can affect the go-to-market motion with ecosystems and partnerships, or we're looking at technology companies that are going to market, partner-led or ecosystem approach for more efficient unit economics. Is there a preference in the thesis either direction?
Well, certainly towards the latter. I would say there's also a preference in terms of the category, the area where they play, right? Like I love verticalized SaaS when it comes to partnership potential and the possibility for ecosystem out there. I love tech-enabled services, for almost the exact inverse reason. I like vertical SaaS. And so I think there's some sweet spots out there right now, right? Like, I mean, from an investment standpoint, I also love AI and automation, but from a partner potential, I really love those former two, because I think there's such the ability to, again, leverage those relationships out there, create hyper value for the client, and those spaces just open themselves wide up for that potential.
Quick kind of like way to end the podcast and the conversation in terms of like the appetite for founders, the types of companies you're looking at, seed to Series A, kind of that range.
Yeah, I'd say seed plus, right? Like we're looking for organizations that certainly have product market fit. They've got that cohort of raving fans. They're delivering success, but they haven't built that go to market motion in an effective and scalable way. So, focused on plugging kind of that go to market trough, very much around the potential for partner ecosystem, partner-led growth. So that's obviously one of our main signals that we evaluate deals by, which is how effectively have you either identified some of those potential partnerships, or where can we see that low-hanging fruit? We've got an exercise that we actually just ran our first investment through a couple of weeks ago within a workshop, an ideal partner profile exercise. Very much a lot of the same stuff that we've been doing for years on ideal customer.
I've never heard of VC say that exercise ever before. So I love that.
I did it before I funded the business. So
wow. That's value add, Justin.
Correct. I mean, value add is squarely how I describe our focus and our goal.
Amazing. I've said on the podcast at the beginning of last year that I truly do believe that the CEOs and entrepreneurs of tomorrow are the best partner people, because they have to have this. And again, I'm qualifying this with the best. There's certainly charlatans in every role. But if you really are a change agent partner professional, you have to be able to help your marketing organization go to market together. You have to be able to help your sellers sell together, your success team retain together. You have to be able to do all those things, which makes you a fantastic candidate to be an entrepreneur. But here's my plea. And I'm going to tie this all back full circle. What you just said with all of your experience is like, hey, our thesis really isn't partner tech. Please don't go out and build more partner tech. Please don't go out and build more I have heard of so many people that I really loved, and I'm like, why didn't you go attack a vertical and just build a partner-led company? Mm-hmm. You could have killed it. Why did you go build the 700th version of PRM that I know is not going to work? Like, you're not going to replace my PRM. I could care less about it. I don't even know if it works. Should we even have it? And I'm joking. I'm totally saying this tongue in cheek. Mm-hmm. Like you have to have it in certain ways, and there's totally different ways to do it. And there's already really good vendors out there. Is the kind of the point. Yep. Like from InPartner to Allbound, Partner Stack, Crossbeam, Reveal, whatever it is. Like there's not more budget to go attack there, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to go disrupt businesses that are resting on their laurels and verticalized SaaS areas, or create communities or tech-enabled service companies, just like you said. where your mastery as a partner person is such a competitive advantage right out of Jump Street.
Well, I'll show you something funny here. I'll just rotate my screen quickly. So one of my partners in this firm was actually in Allbound. So
there you go.
years ago, I think it was a little bit early in that business, but it is really fascinating what's going on in partner tech right now. I agree that we don't necessarily need more. I think though there's some additional value add to be realized within those offerings today. But I'm excited at the space. I'm excited at all of the focus that is kind of bubbling and about to boil over, I think, in the partner ecosystem area, and love what you guys are doing.
All right. I love it, Justin. I can't wait to write and talk with you more about some of the stuff that you've done in the past, because I think that needs to be democratized, put out in the world, grow a bigger market, right? Rising tide raises all ships.
Agreed.
And the founders or soon to be or would be founders out there, definitely go follow Justin Gray on LinkedIn. He's taught me a lot. And then check out inrevenue.capital. This is a fully shameless plug for me, and that is not paid again. I'm just doing it because I really, really love the lessons from this one. Justin, thanks so much for coming up on PartnerUp. And folks, we'll see you all next time.